Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Deckology, and in this episode, let's just get straight into it. The deck of the day is a new deck that I just got, and it is the In Session Playing Cards Junior Year Edition. This is the third installment of the In Session Playing Cards. If you watched last episode, you saw that Danny had won the Deck of the Year with the Sophomore Year deck here. Designed by, I didn't give Tanner James a shout out on this last one. I saw that because I just talked to Danny. I haven't talked to Tanner before. So if you have gone to school, there's a good chance that you have seen something like this, and hopefully it doesn't trigger anybody. But this is a Scantron test. So here in the United States, at least, this is like what they would use a lot for the SAT test or general tests that I would typically not do very good in. All the way. And so I would go through and do AC/DC, just like when I didn't know the answers. It was a complicated thing. I was not a very good student, but what I do like about this deck though, so there's a couple of things. I love when, I'm a fan of fans. And technically I would consider this a broken border deck. So when you fan it, it has this really cool pattern here. So I really appreciate a good fan, as you may have known if you have listened to any of the other episodes. So it works great fan for riffle fans as well. Another thing that I like about it is the entire face card design. So it looks like it was drawn in with like a ballpoint pen or like a number 2 pencil. And so it's like the entire deck itself just looks like it was like doodled. On the back of the tuck case, there's some like doodle art that is on the back of it. So I think that's pretty cool too. The only one that I do know who made it is, I can recognize it by the graffiti, and that's my buddy James. You can see him at Rotting Hands. He was one of the OG members of the Cards and Beards group. So anyways, I like the drawing factor. I think the fact that each thing, like it's even outside the lines a little bit on the pips, I thought that was pretty sweet. I like that. It's not like perfect, which is kind of cool, seeing how it's like shaded in. Nothing is like the same necessarily from what I can tell at a glance. So I thought this was a pretty sweet deck. So one thing that is different about it for me, I do want to draw attention before I get into some of the other stuff, is the Ace of Spades is a very cool Ace of Spades. Like the ultimate doodle kind of Ace of Spades, if you know what I'm saying. So I love all the detail that is thrown into this. Outside of the design, the story behind this deck is I saw it on Instagram Live a couple years ago. He had a prototype made, and I don't even know if he was for sure... if he had for sure decided that this was going to be the junior year edition, but he was playing with it, and I was just like laying in bed, like usually like when these guys would go live and jam, it would be pretty late at night. So I'm just like laying in bed, and all of a sudden this dude pulls out his deck of cards. It's like a Scantron, and I'm like, but there is a marking system to the deck itself. So you can tell which card it is when somebody picks a card. You can tell which card this is. I haven't taken the time to learn the system yet because I just got these cards. But what I initially noticed about the deck, outside of the design, is this is the thickest deck that I think I've handled for a long time. When I measured it, the 5 cards with the caliper, it measured in at 1.62 or 1.61, somewhere in that range, of millimeters. 1.61 millimeters. So this is a thick deck, a lot thicker than the last one. The sophomore year edition was 1.42 millimeters. And so I was like, okay, so we are thicker. I noticed that immediately right when I got the box itself. I noticed that the box was a lot thicker than what I was used to, and I wasn't able to put it in my little card stand back there. So that was just kind of something to note. If you do have this and you've got like the standard cassette tape thing, this deck won't fit in there. So that was kind of an experience. So I'm just kind of figuring out how I want to display it. I'll probably have it like stacked up like next to the sophomore year. So it's like almost like it's like notebook or something like that. And then this is the freshman year edition that he had as well. So these are the freshman, sophomore, junior year edition, and he is teasing the senior year right now. But you can see here the difference in thickness between these decks, maybe. I don't know if that's showing up on camera very well or not, but yeah, so this one is different. It's made by WJPC. I don't know what that stands for. I looked online, and it just says it's an acronym for the company. I don't know if that means like waterproof card. I saw somewhere where it says waterproof, so I don't know if that's waterproof playing cards or water. I don't know what WJPC stands for. I assume something playing cards. But I don't think I've got any decks that are printed like this. So it's a thicker deck, and if you guys know, based off the last episode, you know that I prefer those thin decks. They had a card stock that what's it called? Cardmundi Slimline B9 stock. That is what I discovered recently is my favorite card stock, and I can't believe I'm the guy now that has a preference on paper, but here we are. Okay, so that is the deck of the day. I want to get into some quick deck data here for you. So there was a couple of sales this past week that kind of caught my eye. Has me wondering, are we in a market crash for playing cards? There's two sales recently on eBay that caught my eye. If you notice, I think I was on one of the last episodes. I think it was the one where I was talking about the red seals on the Orbit case. Those were going for like $300 some. So one sold on SoCal for like $330, I think, in an auction. Another one sold on eBay for around $310. And then recently, one sold for $211. So there's a $100 drop on the price for it. So I can't imagine that seller. If I were selling it and it went for $100 less than the last one within a week, I'd be kind of salty about it. But those decks cost probably, I think you get them. I don't know if you got them for free at CardCon or not, but still profit. You're making some pretty decent profit if you sell two decks of cards for over $200. So not bad, but something to note. The other sale that had happened in this past week, this sale happened on January 3rd. It was a first V1 deck on eBay that was new, and it sold for $21. So I don't know what's happening, but I do remember those decks were going for a lot. I think in the last episode I even mentioned it was like $100 or $150 back in December of 2020, I think, when one of them sold on SoCal Playing Cards. I was a little bit like, the fact it's $20, I was like, man. Of all the months that I decided, so in January I decided I'm not going to buy any decks of cards. Like I'm done. I knew I have a lot of decks on order. I had some decks coming in, including, this wasn't going to be the deck of the day, but I'm going to save it. But this Fontaine Gold, man. You know what? Let me just go ahead and get into the Fontaine Gold. So deck of the day too. So this Fontaine Gold edition was worth the wait, I would say. Initially it feels a little bit thicker than the other ones. And by the other ones, I mean here. Okay, so these are all of the shiny ones that Fontaine has released so far. So I've got the regular, the OG Hollow, a gold OG Hollow, spiral Hollow, black Hollow, rainbow, and another spiral. But the gold all stacked next to each other. I don't know what I did with my third one, but when you stack these things up, it looks pretty cool. So I low-key kind of wish I had gotten a brick of them, but do I need $180 worth of cards? No. But do I wish I still had the gold brick case that it comes in? Absolutely. I think that would look really cool next to, this is the last brick that I got from Fontaine, and the last brick I got in general, actually. It's been a while. This is the Black Hollow edition that it came in. So the gold one, now if this is a kind of a sample of what is to come with the other holographics or foiled decks that they are pre-selling, I'm looking forward to the others. I think they got red, blue, and purple. I didn't get the purple ones. I was like, let's just chill and get those in the aftermarket. Because I decided I was done buying decks towards the end of December. I was like, I'm just going to chill for a while, take the month off. And then of course there's a lot of deals going on with cards right now. So, it is what it is, but, something that I know I can eventually get on the resale market. It's been interesting though, because when you are consciously like, nope, I'm not going to buy this. It seems like all the playing card companies are like, hey, I'm Organic Playing Cards. We're going to sell our exotic V2 deck now for $60. I was like, oh, the one I need. Now I've got 2 full passports from Organic Playing Cards. I just need to turn in. And it was another thing where I was like, you know what? Just get it in the aftermarket. You'll always be able to find it. You'll be able to trade for it. You have plenty of decks that you can trade for. This is like the self-talk I'm doing, but low key, I'm really wishing I had it, but it's, it is what it is. For some more deck data here, we've got the gold hollow edition. This one actually ended up coming in at 1.41 millimeters thickness for the 5 cards. To compare with the other ones, the rainbow edition came in at 1.39. The spirals came in at 1.42. The Fontaine hollow black edition came in at 1.43. And the OG hollows came in at 1.38. So that's just kind of like, this is right in line with the last couple. The spiral, they're all kind of the same, and I can't tell if it's just like that 0.01 difference is because maybe I'm like, the caliber might be a little bit tighter than normal, so give or take a little bit of a 1/10 of a millimeter, but that is, for those curious, how thin these cards are. So to note that these are 1.41, and the sophomore year or junior year edition is 1.61. So these are significantly thicker, and you can tell right away. So just something to note. The next thing I'm going to talk about is a thing that I learned about the King of Hearts. But before I go into that, I want to answer one of the questions that I got when I posted. This one is from Skylar 3D Deck Designs. Check them out for deck cutting. What's more important for the success of a brand, the cardists / performers or the cards themselves? And I see kind of where he's coming from with this, because like if nobody likes you, but you design a cool deck, I could see why there would be like influence to not buy something. There is that chance. But if nobody likes you and you still make a really cool deck of cards, there's gonna be a lot of people that don't know you or the performer, and are still gonna buy that deck of cards. So in my opinion, I think the cards themselves are what is most important for a card brand, especially when standing out, and the success of a brand. I think customer service goes a long way in this tight-knit community. So that is noted. So I imagine that if you are a successful enough brand, you're still going to have a big enough following, people that are going to support you no matter what. But if you have an ugly deck, people just aren't probably going to buy it. That's the harsh reality of the market that we live in. And so where do you see AI taking video creative? So where I see this happening, and here's what, like, this ties together with the King of Hearts. I was like, you know what? Instead of Googling this and doing my own research, let's use ChatGPT to do the research for me. And so ChatGPT gave me this answer when I asked, why does the King of Hearts have a sword going into his head? And this is the word for word, the response that ChatGPT came back with. The King of Hearts in a standard deck of playing cards, the King of Hearts is typically depicted as a man with a beard holding a scepter in one hand and a sword in the other hand. The sword is often depicted as being pointed at the king's head, with the tip touching his temple. So not in his head, just the tip of it just touching his temple. So it's not in his head, which is interesting. The depiction is believed to have originated in France in the 15th century and has been used in many decks of cards since then. There are a few theories about why the King of Hearts is depicted in this way. One theory is that the sword represents the power and authority of the king, and the position of the sword suggests that the king is willing to defend his kingdom and his people even at the cost of his own life. Another theory is that the sword represents the king's wisdom and ability to make difficult decisions. And then I was like, okay. Who is the King of Hearts? And that's where I went down this rabbit hole of Deckology, where there is just, it kind of like is, everything's like up to interpretation when it comes to the history of playing cards. There is like some documented facts about like where the cards came from, but even then we're talking 1300s, 1400s, 1500s when all of this trading and stuff was happening. Cards kind of came in like when they got traded into France in like the 1500s. That's when you got this kind of like design, and there's speculation on who the court cards were, different like kings and rulers from back in the day. But to me, it was all very much speculation. You see a lot of opinions, and one of the opinions about this one, the King of Hearts, is King Charlemagne. So that is one theory of who this is. But then I also was reading about how they wanted them to be nameless, because if you think about it from a sales perspective, why would we want, like, think about if you put today's rulers, today's presidents, or anybody that's like from this last century even on these cards, how much of a political issue that would be, and how much somebody probably wouldn't buy a deck of cards because of, oh, this person's on it or that person's on it. So in my opinion, the people on the face of the cards is on the standard United States playing cards. Now see, like, this one is different. I don't know who this is. I don't know if there's any inspiration behind it. I know on some other decks, there's people that draw themselves on it. There's people that have family members on it. You can kind of go every direction with the court cards. Oh, and I did see, so the other theories about the France version of the deck, the theories of who the people are, King Charlemagne for the King of Hearts. And on the King of Spades, you have the Old Testament King David from the Bible. From the diamonds, you have Julius Caesar or Augustus Caesar. And on the clubs, you have Alexander the Great. Now, I don't know if any of those court cards actually look like any of those people or not. They didn't really have very good cameras back then, so I can't really confirm if it is or isn't. And I don't think anybody can. So, okay, let's move on to another one of my questions. Let's see here. One piece of advice that you would give your beginning collector self. Get into the Instagram lives earlier on. So if you are kind of new to cardistry, new to collecting, new to magic, there are always a lot of like Instagram lives. There's people that go live on TikTok. Jump in on those and just kind of watch and observe, participate, ask questions. I learned a lot about playing cards, a lot about some hot goss from those Instagram lives and why people feel the way they feel about certain companies and brands and all of that. And it's just fun seeing people from all around the world just connecting via playing cards. So it's pretty cool. You'll see on Instagram lives, you'll see people teaching people how to do stuff, showing off collections, talking about industry news, a lot of different stuff like that. So I think if I were to give myself advice going back, I wouldn't be as hesitant, when it comes to jumping in on those lives. You don't have to participate. People, like, I haven't had a bad experience in a live. It's always been fun, and like you start kind of getting to know everybody a little bit better too, and it's a good time. It's fun. I've done lives where I thought I was just going to hop on for 20 minutes, and I get cut off by Instagram when it hits 60 minutes. So it's fun to be able to hang out and kind of jam out with people from all over the place, different time zones. So that makes it interesting too. But that's what I would give that piece of advice. I actually think I met Chris, the guy that asked the question, in an Instagram live. So there's that too. Let's do another quick question before I dive into my last thing. What do you think are the biggest drawbacks to collecting older antique decks? Okay. And this question is being asked from somebody that collects antique decks. So, and I have a couple of antique decks. I'll tell you about what I like about antique decks first. So this is a Congress edition playing cards, and if you don't follow the Congress guy, then you should, because you'll learn all about Congress playing cards and a lot of history about playing cards, and I think he's got a podcast coming out too. Anyways, what I like about the antique decks is tuck cases. Easy. They used to do tuck cases in a very fancy way. So this is an old Congress deck. The drawback to them, though, is if you play with the cards, they're usually pretty poor in handling. And also it is just a collector's thing too. I feel like I wouldn't imagine there's a lot of people playing with antique decks a lot. Maybe there are. But like this design with a B on the back is kind of a, boring design. So that'd be one drawback, is if you are like me and you like shiny, flashy, broken border decks that fan really well, antique decks are not for you. I wouldn't go down that route. Now, if you do like the history of playing cards, there's a lot of history when it comes to this stuff. This is a deck that has, these decks came from auctions and garage sales that my mom would go to. This one is called the Ladies Home Companion playing cards. This was like a 1970s series of playing cards. Once again, the tuck case. This comes out, and this is like velvet. It's soft, and but there's just pictures of naked dudes on the front of these cards. But the tuck case, though, we got that shiny gold. This would pair well with the shiny gold from the Fontaine deck. Anyways, drawbacks though, the use. That's probably like the only one. And then another question, favorite this is from my buddy John. Favorite non-playing card deck, i.e. Pokemon, Magic, The Gathering, etc. I'm going to have to go with, I was really into Yu-Gi-Oh! Back in like 2004 to 2005-ish. 2003 maybe. So I was like 7th-ish grade, I'd say. I just remember those cards. They looked really cool with the holographic cards. I was definitely into Pokemon back in 3rd grade, which would take me back to 1999-ish, 2000. But I only collected them just because like the shiny ones were really cool. But otherwise, I never even actually like battled or played anybody. But I did collect those back in the day. Wish I kept my Pokemon ones, but here we are. Anyways, let's wrap this episode up. I wanted to read something to you that I thought was really interesting. So one way that I feel like AI could be best used when it comes to video creation moving forward, beyond like captions, editing, there's some very fundamental uses for artificial intelligence and editing and video creation and content ideas. So with ChatGPT, you can tell it like, hey, type something like this for me, and it'll type something like that for you. Let me know what you guys think of this. So I told ChatGPT, write a paragraph about what cardistry is and include how you don't have to be good at it to enjoy it. It's a good fidget hobby. And here's what ChatGPT came back with. And here is what I think would be useful if you are in video creation and you have trouble with coming up with like, what should I say? Something like that. Imagine putting like footage of cardistry over this right here. This is nuts. Cardistry is the art of manipulating playing cards to create visually striking patterns and movements. It's a form of performance art that combines elements of magic, dance, juggling, and can be quite mesmerizing to watch. While cardistry often looks complex and difficult, it's actually a hobby that can be enjoyed by people of all skill levels. Many people who practice cardistry simply enjoy the sensation of manipulating cards in their hands and find it to be relaxing and satisfying fidget activity. Even if you don't have the dexterity or patience to master the most advanced moves, you can still have fun experimenting with different shuffles and flourishes. It is a hobby that one can pick up and enjoy anytime and anywhere. It's a form of creativity and expression in itself. So I see AI being utilized pretty more and more. So I see AI coming in play quite a bit down the road. I think it is refining itself, but for what it just did, and it did that in the matter of within, I'd say, 30 seconds, was pretty mind-boggling to me.